My name's Ollie. I'm Professor of Heat and Health and Director of the Heat and Health Research Centre here at the University of Sydney in the Faculty of Medicine and Health. And I study people getting hot and overheating. So summer's here, the temperatures are rising and it's getting humid, and we need to think about ways in which we can keep cool in a sustainable and affordable way. So first of all, we need to have a bit of a change in mindset. We really focus on keeping the house cool, but what we really need to do is keep you cool, the people cool inside that house. And the reason that's an important distinction is because it opens us up to other options that might be cheaper and less carbon intensive. So one of the things that we're looking at right now is something called fan first cooling. And what this actually does is that it allows the internal temperature of a house to go higher than we normally would with air conditioning, but we move air first with things like pedestal fans or ceiling fans. And what that does, it cools you down using the temperature of the air that might be a little higher. So if I'm moving air across the skin with a fan, the air might be 26 degrees Celsius, but it'll feel like it's 22 degrees Celsius. So what this means is that we can adjust the thermostat set point of our air conditioner to turn on chilling at a much higher temperature, because what happens is that as the room heats up throughout the day, the air conditioner turns on later in the day, it turns off earlier in the day, it's not running as hard during the middle of the day. It saves you about 70% on your electricity bill for air conditioning. I'm a fan of fans, what can I say? Fan squared. Yeah, so I'd say there's three things that we really need to think of. The first thing is this vicious cycle that we found ourselves in where we're feeling hot, we're using AC, that AC is being powered by fossil fuel power plants effectively, makes it hotter, drives more air conditioning. So we need to break that vicious cycle. The second thing is that what air conditioners do is that they don't kind of defy the laws of physics, right? What they do is that they just redistribute heat energy. So if you're inside a house where it's hot and you're using an air conditioner, you're taking that heat and you're dumping it outside. But if you're outside and you don't have access to air conditioning, you're actually exposed to even higher temperatures. Another thing is that we become really dependent on these air conditioners because you're not exposing yourself to the stressor that helps you adapt, right? So the human body is really good at adapting to extreme heat. We have an increase in something called our plasma volume, which means our heart doesn't have to work as hard when we're exposed to the heat. It makes you cooler, so when you're walking around with a slightly lower core temperature than you did beforehand, before you heat acclimated. And it makes you feel more comfortable and cooler when you're exposed to hot conditions. If you're out in the sun, that increases how much heat stress that you'll experience. The level of humidity is really important as well, right? Because the only way in which the body can physiologically keep cool when we're exposed to temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius or higher is actually through sweat evaporation. So you produce the sweat, but it's not the production of sweat that cools you down, it's the evaporation of sweat. And the thing that prevents sweat from evaporating is high ambient humidity. So if it's a high humidity day, that's why you struggle more. So you can alleviate that by trying to introduce airflow to the environment that helps that acceleration of the sweat evaporation. We generate a lot of heat from activity, so obviously slowing down makes a lot of sense, right? Because then you're generating less heat inside the body, and therefore your body doesn't have to work as hard to get rid of that heat. If you have water, you can think about doing two things. Of course, drinking it is a good idea to maintain adequate hydration, but instead of just drinking it, think about pouring it as well. So if you apply water to the skin surface, that water can evaporate and then that cools you down as well without having to sweat. Well, cooling in the future is going to look very different, and it's going to be applied in a variety of different ways. And these are things that we can start advocating for now. There's three different levels in which we can introduce interventions to try to help keep people cool. The first one is the landscape level. So this means more green infrastructure like parks, like trees. They provide shade, but they also cool the environment because there's lots of moisture in that grass and in those leaves, which then evaporates and that cools the air temperature down. You need blue infrastructure. This means more lakes, more rivers, more streams, because this helps reflect solar radiation from the environment. For people inside of houses, we need to think about ways in which we can mitigate the way in which heat gets from outside the house to the interior of that house. And this means that we really need to carefully think about the way that buildings are designed and the materials that they're constructed of. And then finally, there are things that we can do at the personal level. So this is when these two other areas of what we call the heat cascade effectively fail, and you're still exposed to extreme heat and humidity. So thinking about moving air more, chilling it less, applying water to the skin surface, using water and immersing the limbs in water, particularly the feet, because they have high surface area to mass ratio. They're like really good radiators. So these are some simple, sustainable, low resource strategies that the most vulnerable can use when they're exposed to extreme heat.